Here we go again. Hey, what's up, everyone? My Little Pony might be dead, but I am not. At least on the outside. Let's just jump right into this. A while back, I bought a physical copy of Past Sins, one of the most iconic stories in the pony fandom. I never read it myself, but I figured it had to be good, considering that someone thought it was worth printing and selling. But when I shared my new acquisition on my Fanfic blog, I was complimented for my new doorstop. It's one of those stories. So, is Past Sins a classic worth preserving, or was it a waste of money? Let's find out together. The plot is pretty straightforward. It all starts when Nightmare Moon's fan club performs a ritual to give Nightmare Moon her own form. They set up shop in the Everfree, kidnap Twilight Sparkle, take some of her magic blood, and get really close to finishing the ritual right before Celestia shows up and spoils their fun. All of them go to jail, and that's it. The next day, Twilight goes back to the forest to collect some stuff she's dropped, and she comes across a little filly who looks like a chibi Nightmare Moon. You see, even though the ritual was unfinished, it still managed to produce something. In this case, a little alicorn. Congratulations, Twilight, it's a girl. Her first instinct is to inform Celestia, but upon discovering that the amnesiac filly is, freaking adorable, she realizes that she has no choice but to adopt her as her own. So she takes her into her home, has her already give her a makeover that is somehow less subtle than her original look, and names her Nyx. From there, Twilight learns how to be a parent, and Nyx must learn how to be an alicorn OC that isn't cringy. Yeah, not an easy task. However, the president of the Nightmare Moon fan club is still at large, and he will not rest until his moon waifu rules all of Equestria. So yeah, pretty standard plot. In the beginning, my impression of the story was fairly positive. The premise was weird, and I definitely had questions, but I really liked the characterization of the central cast. Twilight in particular is really well done. It's irritating that she doesn't tell Celestia about Nyx, but worrying about her idol overreacting to something is, well, it's very much in line with her character. In fact, Twilight's obsessive nature is portrayed faithfully. For example, in moments of crisis, we will see her inner dialogue fire off a million questions and concerns per minute. Past Sins also takes the time to establish her relationship with Nyx. Twilight takes her in as her cousin and lets her live the life of a child. She enrolls her in school, tells her bedtime stories, and goes full-on Karen mode when the bullies start getting on her case. I can't lie, I have a real soft spot for some wholesome slice-of-life storytelling. And overall, this first act does a great job of getting you invested in their relationship, and gives you a reason to care when the angst starts to kick in. Yeah, we all know and love Twilight. But what about our main character, huh? Some people say that Nyx suffers from Mary Sue syndrome, which is absolutely absurd. I mean, sure, she's an OC that's related to the main character, has absurd magical powers, which she masters with very little difficulty, and she befriends almost everyone she meets within a few minutes. Oh, okay, I see it now. Nyx definitely has some obnoxious traits, but she has some good ones too. For example, she is an adorable bookworm, she's loyal to her friends, and she goes through an emotional arc where she learns valuable life lessons. But I think the thing that balances out her Mary Sue-ness is that she's, well, how do I put it? I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed. Thank you, Smash Mouth. Despite it all, Nyx is still a naive child, which she pays the price for. Well, you're saying there's something cool in the Everfree forest? Well, thank you, schoolyard bullies. I'm going to investigate right away. Later, when she takes over the world, her inexperience bites her in the butt yet again. Finally, the world is under my control. Nothing can stop me now. Wait, how many meetings do I have to go to? What the f*** is a tax plan? I have to negotiate trade agreements? I regret everything. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. I mean, how did we even get to this point? Nightmare Moon Fan Club President, also known as Spell Nexus, finds out that Nyx is Chippy Nightmare Moon, so he wants to complete the spell that will turn her into Nightmare Moon. Since he's Celestia's former student, he rings her up and is like,
I believe that Nyx is Nightmare Moon.
Oh no.
I want to perform a spell on her to see if she's a threat.
What kind of spell?
A magic one.
That sounds about right. So anyway, my totally not evil former student needs to perform a spell to see if Nyx is still evil.
That sounds fair. Can I come with?
No.
Okay, can I talk to Nyx before you go?
No.
Why not?
She needs to believe that you are abandoning her and therefore have a reason to resent you.
Cool. I love it when conflicts are built on misunderstandings that could be avoided with a 5-minute conversation.
I know, right?
So Celestia takes Nyx away from Twilight, gives her the Spell Nexus, and he completes the spell, turning her into Nightmare Moon. And let me tell you, she is not happy. She starts by telling her adoptive mother to buzz off, joins her fanboys, and makes her home at the castle of the two sisters. Speaking of the two sisters, their biggest enemy is on the loose, so they react to this very dangerous situation like any rational person would.
I think we should split up. What are we looking for? Clues!
Yeah, so both sisters are banished without breaking a sweat. Nightmare Moon takes over and establishes eternal night. Alright, so Nyx's heel turn. Let's talk about it. I did not like it. Since the evil is forced upon Nyx, she is robbed of agency. She is the powerless victim of unfortunate circumstances, instead of a character who drives her own destiny. If this all sounds familiar, this is the exact same nonsense that drove me crazy about Her Own Pony. By taking away a character's agency, they become more passive and less interesting. Here's how I would have changed this sequence of events. While Twilight and Celestia are chatting, Nyx overhears their conversation and is overcome with fear. Before they finish, she runs off and eventually runs into Spell Nexus, who says stuff about, they're all afraid of your true potential, Nyx. Embrace your destiny, and you'll never have to be afraid again. So, driven by fear, she decides to go through with the ritual and becomes Nightmare Moon. It's the same outcome, stays true to the theme, and adds to her character. Easy fix. Now, despite my grievances with the heel turn, I did find it funny how the whole situation feels like a giant metaphor for puberty. I mean, let's look at the facts here. Body goes through changes. Check. Starts having radical and irrational thoughts. Check. Starts to resent authority figures. Check. Distances herself from childish things in an attempt to look grown up. Check. Gets a haircut, dresses in dark colors, gives herself an edgy new name, starts hanging out with sketchy people. Check, 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 and check. I don't know if this was intentional, but I just thought it was kind of funny. But whatever. Putting that all aside, let's talk about another small issue that I had. The Cult of Nightmare Moon. Why does it exist? I mean, I figured there must be a logical reason for it, but for the life of me, I couldn't figure it out. Putting aside the obvious that, she was evil, Nightmare Moon kind of sucks at everything. She never exhibited great leadership qualities, and her eternal night policy would guarantee the death of every living thing. Her only real accomplishment was that she was able to turn off the lights for a few hours before getting gunned down by rainbow lasers. Twice. I mean, let's face it, guys. Nightmare Moon is the Mussolini of My Little Pony villains. Still, Spell Nexus and his drones seem enamored with her, and see Celestia as nothing but a tyrant. Now, I'm not trying to be nitpicky. These videos take hours to make, so I only put in the stuff that matters. And for some reason, this is one thing that I could just not ignore. So much so that it kind of tainted my enjoyment of the overall story. Eventually, I just developed a headcanon that Spell Nexus and his groupies were the kind of people who wrote a few too many Maleficent fanfics in their spare time, and then it just finally got to their head. That was until I learned the truth behind the villain. It turns out Spell Nexus was the true Nightmare Moon all along. At least in spirit. You see, he was wandering the woods the night she was defeated, and then a fragment of her essence got trapped in him, and now he has all the same petty rage that she did. Also, he can share his essence with other ponies, which is how we started this little cult in the first place. What kind of Kingdom Hearts bullshit is this? Now, to be fair, this all does tie into the theme of past sins, which is the nature of rage and resentment. According to past sins, resentment can act like a viral infection, spreading hate and misery at the speed of your average internet connection. Luna was patient zero, and what started as a desire for just a little recognition grew into a need to rule the world. In this story, the rage spreads to Spell Nexus, and then to all of his followers, and their actions result in absolute pandemonium. The infectious nature of rage is something I can attest to personally, as I could be having a perfectly fine day, but then I see some drama about a game I don't even play, and for some reason, I get that fire in my chest. I don't act on it, because that would be dumb and a waste of time, but there's no denying that rage is addicting, and it can spread like wildfire. So how do you deal with this cycle of resentment? How do you stop a grudge dead in its tracks? Well, according to past sins, the only way to fight a grudge is through unadulterated love and forgiveness. You see, after Nyx seizes the throne, Twilight risks her life and tries to talk some sense into her, which was a rather selfless and dangerous act. Spell Nexus, the epitome of resentment, encourages his queen to execute her. But Nyx is a little hesitant. She settles by locking her away, leaving the situation conflicted and very, very angsty. Later, the CMC, who assume that Nyx is merely in a bad mood, sneak into her castle and surprise her with a gift. Oh boy. The facade starts to break, and after this point, Nyx starts to get soft. She begins raising the sun every once in a while. She starts being nice to her subjects. And when Spell Brat starts to get off the rails, she decides that this whole thing is actually a bunch of nonsense and gives him a good old-fashioned exorcism. At this point, the terrible reign of Nightmare Moon is over. But there's still one enemy Nyx must face. Herself. She locks herself away, convinced that she doesn't deserve happiness. And also, she's super scared about what Celestia will do when she returns. I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But after some loving reassurance from Twilight, she brings the princesses back and is like, hey, so from the bottom of my heart, my bad. This puts them at a loss. It's not very common for villains to just give up and reform themselves. However, they can't ignore that Nyx broke, a ton of laws. Can they? In case you thought the theme was being too subtle, the penultimate chapter follows the princesses as they ask every pony about what they should do with Nyx. Prison? Community service? Absolution? Making an apology video? After much consideration, they decide to exonerate Nyx, reversing the spell that made her big and return her to chibi-sized, to be watched over by Twilight. Aw, you see, now they're family again, ain't that adorable? And that's it. That's Past Sins. In the end, I understand why Past Sins is a divisive story, as my own opinion frequently flipped between kind of liking it and kind of being annoyed by it. I like how it establishes relationships between all of the characters, as it makes Nyx's fall from grace all the more heartbreaking. However, I could have used a little less edge, with the villains performing blood rituals and calling for public execution. I can't help but feel like the author was trying too hard to provoke a reaction from me. It also doesn't help that the story was being driven by characters who were passing around the idiot ball like the world's most indecisive soccer team. That being said, I enjoyed Past Sins more than I didn't. the message was positive and was delivered well. Also, I would be lying if I said the ending didn't leave a smile on my face. So consider this review a mild recommendation. Well, that's all I have for now, but I wanted to thank you all for sticking around. I have some fun videos planned for the future, but I don't know when they'll come out. But I hope y'all stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.